All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to COVID Memorial Day, our virtual vigil. Kristen, are you with us?
I'm here.
Well, let's get started, Kristen. Thank you, Mark, for that gorgeous music. Kristen, do you want to begin?
Yeah, I'm happy to jump in. It's so great to be here with everyone today. My name is Kristen Urquiza. I'm the co-founder and co-executive director of Marked by COVID. And this is our second annual COVID Memorial Day virtual vigil. We are gathered here virtually across the United States to share stories, to uplift the need for a permanent, federally recognized COVID Memorial Day. And I'm very delighted to share to also kick off Reimagine's season of grief, growth, and justice. Brad?
Yeah, and I'm Brad Wolf, the founder of Reimagine, and it's so great to be with you this evening to be a co-host with Kristen on this really poignant day with so many of you out there, so many people participating. We're just so grateful to really hold space with all of you for what we have in store on this COVID Memorial Day, March 7th, 2022. Kristen, tell us
Yes,
a little bit about Marked by COVID.
absolutely. Marked by COVID is a national, grassroots powered, nonpartisan nonprofit that focuses on promoting accountability, recognition, justice, and a pandemic free future by elevating truth in science. It's an organization I co founded with my partner, Christine, in the days following the passage of my dad, Mark, who died from COVID on June 30th of 2020. Brad, do you want to tell us a little bit more about Reimagine?
Sure, I'd love to, Kristen, and just to say how wonderful it is to be here with Marked by COVID and the movement that you've sparked. At Reimagine, we've been a nonprofit organization since 2018, prior to the pandemic, as a space and a community to help people face adversity and loss and mortality, and to really help transform uh, the challenging parts of life into meaningful action and growth. And obviously, as the pandemic has struck, a huge part of that, of the losses we face as a culture, as a world, have happened through this pandemic. And so we at Reimagine, we've been hosting a vigil, a monthly vigil to hold space for the grief, really since the pandemic began. And we've seen the power of creating spaces for healing, for grief, for communal connection around what really matters most, given our culture that tries to push away all of these hard things. And a huge piece of that for us is justice. And today we are through this vigil we're a part of through COVID Memorial Day. This is the launch of our new spring season, which is Reimagine Grief, Growth, and Justice. So through June 9th, we'll be featuring programming that explores how we can achieve transformation, integrity, and wholeness through acts of service, such as volunteering, civic engagement, and activism. And just to see this quote here that you're reading is really our definition of justice: a state of wholeness, integrity, and integrity achieved through healing and transformation. When justice is present, we can trust that our safety and well-being are valued in a community or society. And so, holding a COVID Memorial Day, this is an act today of justice in our country, and we are here to stand proud side by side with all of you on this call to rally together this country for a cause bigger than ourselves, a cause that honors our loved ones, and a cause that is just and that is crucial to the well-being of those of us on this call and really everyone in our country and in the world. And so I also want to share that our co-hosts at this vigil include COVID Grief Network, our friends at COVID Grief Network, the Rose River Memorial, and the National Council for Occupational Safety and Health. And we will paste links now in the chat so you can learn more about all of the folks that have put on uh, co-created this experience really with all of you. We're co-creating it with you who are out there participating. This means nothing without your participation. But now, what I'd like to do is really talk about the why we're here, what brought us to this day. And to do that, I want to turn it back to Kristen, because without Kristen and without Marked by COVID, this day in our country would not exist. So, Kristen, I'm going to stop screen sharing here and turn to you to ask you really what brings us here today. Why are we here?
When my dad was in the hospital, like many of the folks who experienced a COVID loss, I was mostly by myself. It was just me and my partner. I couldn't be with my parents. My mother was sick with COVID. She was in a different state. We didn't really have the opportunity to talk very much to my dad while he was in the hospital, or, even, to his doctors. And I've learned since then that this is a very common experience that so many of us go through, where we did not have the events, the rituals, the process that we're used to and that we need when it comes to mourning a loss. But then also that aside, it's not normal to be losing thousands of people a day to a deadly virus. It's not normal to have tens of thousands of people become sick and continue to live with post-viral illness, such as folks who are suffering from living with long COVID. And, through my own grief, through reaching out and talking to others in this community, it became very clear that we needed to remember this time. We needed to mark this time, not only for ourselves, but for future generations. And that at minimally, the very least that we could do was to have a day in the calendar where we could come together and hold space to just feel and be and mourn and honor and remember what we've been through. To be with people who understand the unique pain of not being able to say goodbye. And to also call into focus the need for our larger society to recognize that this is a mass disabling event. This is a humanitarian crisis, and that our communities continue to need support, that we need support, and that our loved ones, their lives mattered. So through that reflection and through that feeling of absolute rage in my body, like there was a hurricane stuck in there that I needed to get out, we came to this idea of we need not just memorials. Yes, we need permanent memorials, but we also need the recognition of this time. We need a COVID Memorial Day. And so with the help of everyone here and folks viewing in, Marked by COVID has been leading the charge with you by our side to establish the first Monday of March as COVID Memorial Day. And for the years that come, we'll be able to do this. And when it's safe, we'll be able to come together. But as time goes on, we will be able to teach our children, our grandchildren, and future generations about this moment in time, about our pain, about what happens in a public health crisis, about what is lost and who is lost. So it's also codifying the gift of our lived experience so that no one has to go through what we're going through. And so today we're here to observe this time, to be together, to have this safe space, to feel what we need to feel, and remember the nearly 1 million people that we have lost. And so I'm so grateful to you, Brad, for helping to bring this together, and everyone at Reimagine. for recognizing the need for this space in our community and helping to pull it off.
Thank you, Kristen. And I just want to pull up a slide really quick, Kristen, just on your behalf. I want to bring in. I just want to bring in your parents for a second and your dad into this space. I have this slide here. Just if you want to just offer something verbally to or to your mom right now while we have you here and their pictures up.
These are my parents for folks who haven't met them, Brenda and Mark. They both were sick at the same time with COVID. I'm an only child. I come from a working class background. And when my dad got sick, the area that we lived in Arizona was the worst place in the world for cases. And I didn't know what I was going to do. And I thought I was going to lose them both. I know that that is the case for some of us here. I'm so grateful to have my mom. She's been cheerleading me along this entire time. But like you all, I just really miss my dad. And I wish that I didn't know any of you because I wish he was still here. So I'm just very grateful for everyone here who's believed in this cause and who continues to show up for me and for Marked by COVID. My dad would love it and love each and every one of you.
Thank you, Kristen, so much. And just to say, you know, I've had the privilege, as I just know so many of you out there have, of being part of this movement. I mean, really, you all are to transform your grief into action just by showing up. That's an act of what we're talking about. And I was with Kristen in Washington D.C. earlier this year. With so many of you out there, we were there advocating on the Hill for this day to become a federal holiday, and we put on a vigil on the National Mall. And as we went out to put on the vigil, the rain started pouring down, like a gust of wind and rain and lightning that honestly I have not seen living where I am in California. It was like torrential downpour. And it seemed like we should stop. We were trying to broadcast it out to all the people tuning in. I was trying to keep in contact, and I had my phone underneath my shirt trying to broadcast to people, this is what's happening here. And we persevered. Everyone there, despite the rain, despite the lightning, went on with a vigil to honor the loved ones. There was no length. There was too far to go. I mean, that was really nothing to be there in the rain, to put on that vigil. And it just showed that people up there, our loved ones, wherever they are looking down on us and are with us in this moment today. And so as we are with Marked by COVID, as we're with Kristen, and as we're with all of you who have lost loved ones, whether or not you've lost somebody directly in your family, whether or not you've lost a neighbor, whether or not you've lost somebody that you've seen in the newspaper, we've all experienced loss during this time, and we are here as one group, one solidarity infused group to really be with one another in this moment. So with that in mind, let's share a little bit about what we're going to be doing here. Oh, and I do want to ask you, I see this chat very active. What we're going to have a chance later in the vigil to share the names, the ones that we want to honor. I see some of you already doing that now, but what we'd love to invite you to share now in the chat is, why is this day? Why is it important that you have this day? And so I want to share a little bit now about the order of our ceremony this evening. Here's what's going to unfold over the next 90 or so minutes, give or take. We've done this beautiful opening, heard from Kristen and music from Mark, and we're about to move into the candle lighting ceremony. So if you don't have a candle handy, we are going to be lighting candles. Now is a time to go grab your candle for the candle lighting ceremony, something we can all do together. From there, we're going to take a virtual tour of COVID memorials that are created by communities across the United States. And then we're going to invite you to put the names of loved ones in the chat. And thereafter, we're going to hear testimony from those who have loved or who have lost loved ones, and share a reflection from one of our elected officials as a response to these testimonies. And we're going to end then by extinguishing our candles in solidarity together to release light back out into the world. There's many magical elements of this ceremony that we're holding together, that you're going to witness many connective moments and moments that we don't know what's going to happen yet, but we're all going to hold this space in love and kindness and grief together. So, with that, the first blessing that we're going to do together, if you want to go grab your candles, I'm going to turn it over to Sammy. Sammy Feld is going to say a few words, and she serves as the Director of Strategy for the COVID Grief Network, which provides short term grief support and builds long term community for young adults who are grieving in the midst of the pandemic. And we're so grateful to be partnering with Sammy and the COVID Grief Network for all the wonderful work you're doing to support folks in their 20s, 30s, and 40s who have lost a loved one to COVID. And it's our honor to have you lead us in this candle lighting ceremony.
Hi, and welcome. Thank you, Brad. Thank you, Kristen. It's such a privilege to be with you in community, to be with you all this evening as we remember and honor our loved ones. And as Brad mentioned, I am one of the co-founders of the COVID Grief Network, and we offer free short-term group-based grief support specifically for young folks who have lost a loved one to COVID. And all of our support groups and offerings are virtual and delivered by our amazing team of volunteer facilitators. So if you're interested and want to learn more, you can certainly connect to support and learn more about the network at covidgriefnetwork.org. And so now, before we light our candles and open with a blessing, I do want to take a moment to just acknowledge not only the lives lost to COVID that we're honoring here tonight, but also acknowledge the deaths across the world caused by racism, caused by war, by violence, disaster, migration. And in particular, our hearts are with Ukraine tonight and all of the other places around the globe that are experiencing loss and trauma. So now I invite you to join me in lighting a candle of your own as we recite this blessing. By lighting our candles in this time of pandemic, we honor our personal dead, the dead across the world, and all of us still here together.
Por medio de encender nuestras velas en este tiempo de pandemia, honramos a nuestros propios muertos, los que han muerto a través del mundo, y todos nosotros que todavía estamos acá juntos.
And now, all of you, if you'd like to recite this out loud wherever you are with me one final time. By lighting our candles in this time of pandemic, we honor our personal dead, the dead across the world, and all of us still here together. Now I'm going to stop my screen share here for a second. And in the top right corner, there's something called gallery view. You push view. And I'd love to invite everyone to click the gallery view to make sure you're in the gallery view, and then to look out into the space. And if you see anyone with a candle, or someone, even if they don't have a candle, find someone out there with your candle held up, or just the spirit of your heart, and find someone to connect with. Now, will you really connect with them? We're virtual. I don't know, but I believe we can. And so find somebody out there that you want to lock eyes with and send an intention to them for why you're here today and what you hope they get out of this experience. I'm connecting right now with Shannon Cummings. Okay, thank you so much. And we can keep our candles lit now in the spirit of connectedness and love. We'll keep our candles lit for the remainder of this ceremony together.
So we are going to now invite an incredible speaker to join us, Brenda Salgado. She's a first generation Nicaraguan American traditional medicine woman. She's going to be tending a ceremonial fire for the duration of the vigil. And as for part of the forthcoming honor ceremony, when you put your names of loved ones in the chat, Brenda will offer to print those pages out and add them to the fire, along with the names that folks have already submitted as part of the ceremony. And Brenda, would you like to join us and say a few words?
Yes, I'm so honored to be here with all of you. I've been reading the comments, so much loss, so much grief. I'm grateful that I can be here with you all to honor those that have passed on to the world of ancestors. And I've started the ceremonial fire. I will be singing to it, drumming to it, making offerings of frankincense, copal, to send our prayers up to the heavens for those that we love and that have lost and that are in the spirit world now, so they are connecting with us as we're in our time together. So more on that a little when we get to that later. Just know that we're going to be sending those names up in prayer with many blessings to them in the spirit world. Thank you for being here, everyone. Thank you for sharing and holding your heart tenderly as you're with us together around your loss. Thank you for inviting me. I'm grateful to be here.
It's our pleasure to have you, Brenda, and thank you so much for the care and the love and attention you're putting into this today on all of our behalfs. And we're looking forward to the honor ceremony and the way that the fire is interacting. It felt really appropriate to bring you in as we light our own candles to see the fire that you've lit at this moment. And now it is our pleasure to introduce our colleague, Marcos Lutyens, who is the founder of the Rose River Memorial, which is a national grassroots art movement that honors and grieves the many lives lost during COVID. And he's also a co-host of this vigil. Marcos will lead a tour of memorials that have blossomed during the pandemic and that Zubin, my colleague at Reimagine, will play for us in a minute.
Thanks, Brad, so much for the introduction. I'm very honored to be part of this second COVID Memorial Day Vigil with our partners Marked by COVID and Reimagine, and all the more so seeing in the chat, so many sad stories. It seems just a moment ago that we were honoring those lost to COVID last year, and unfortunately, there's so many more people to remember this year as well. I began work on the Rose River Memorial in August 2020, and I know how much work goes into memorialization. And my partners and I, many from the Marked by COVID community, have made memorials in several states across the US, making a felt rose to memorialize each lost loved one. The effort has been shared across so many communities, young and old, and people from many backgrounds who make felt roses. And today we're going to speak to some community members who've been making memorials in Missouri, Dallas, and San Francisco. But we'd also like to acknowledge all the other groups and creative partners who've been working on memorials, both temporary and permanent, across the US, and acknowledge their work to help the community grieve and also celebrate lost loved ones. So here we've got a slideshow of just some of these memorials for you to see. So those were a few of the memorials, and it's so great to have help and collaboration across the United States making these memorials, because there are so many people to be remembered, so many lost loved ones. So I guess, is that back to Kristen or Brad?
Back to me. Thank you so much, Marcos. We're actually now going to go live to a few of the memorial sites and hear a bit from community leaders about their installations and why they created them. First, we're going to hear from Marked by COVID Arizona Hub Leader Tara Krebs and I believe Todd Bailey. They are both at the Arizona Historical Society in Phoenix, where there was a memorial earlier today and the installation of over 20 panels of the COVID memorial quilt. Tara?
Hi, Kristen. Sorry, I didn't think I could cry more today. Todd is not with us right now. But as you said, I'm in Phoenix. I'm at the Arizona Heritage Center, where we hosted our second COVID Memorial Day gathering. The importance of hosting our gathering here at the Heritage Center is that while we're not living through a beautiful part of our history, we are living through history. And it's just amazing to have it at this venue here. We partnered with Floral Heart Project, the Remembrance Heart Project, and also the COVID Memorial Quilt, which you can see behind me. We have 22 panels displayed today, including a panel that has my dad on it. So it's super important to me. Kristen's dad is here as well, and Todd's aunt and Caitlin's mom. Seeing these panels all together has just been so moving, and it's such a reminder that through this devastation and tragedy, there are so many kind people bringing beauty into the world. Something different about this year's COVID Memorial Day that we did was partner with some other organizations not in the nonprofit space, Embry Health and the Arizona Public Health Association. We're here today as speakers. Both organizations have stepped up during the pandemic, continuing to do so, making testing sites accessible to our communities, as well as sharing accurate information and data. So I'm not super technologically advanced, and since Todd isn't here, I'm just going to go ahead and turn my camera around so that you guys can see this installation the same way that I can.
Yep, I think we've got
There's a little
good
bit more about.
view now.
Okay. It's really impactful seeing it all together.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And I would zoom in on all of them, but it would take a very long time. But I'd just like to show you guys this. Just this quote by Madeline, who was 13 when she started this project. And she said, "They're not numbers, they're people who died, and they deserve to be remembered." And just seeing this again and knowing that she took the time to stitch each and every one of these panels, sorry, for our loved ones is just so moving. You know, my dad is up there on the top left, and I'm so honored that he's there, but at the same time, I wish he wasn't. Anyways, I'm sending love to each and every one of you, and thank you for including me in this day.
Thank you so much, Tara.
Yeah, thank you, Tara. Thank you so much. And just to be able to, for us to weave together the tableau that is this country right now and in the world, where we're on this day beginning to really honor this day in the way that it deserves, with something like what you've just shared. And as such, to continue in that vein, we would love to go now to St. Louis where we welcome Dana Turkovich, curator of you can share how to say it, Laumeyer Sculpture Park, and Rabbi Jim Bennett, representing Congregation Shaharei Emeth and the Interfaith Partnership of St. Louis. We're really grateful to have you both here and to share what you are doing today in St. Louis, Missouri.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you to Mark by COVID and Reimagine for including us in this moving and emotional memorial today. Thank you, Marcos Lucians, for creating such an important and timely public artwork. We are so glad to be involved in exhibiting this project and working with our partners and contributing through the language of art to this commemorative sculpture that has such a universal presence. Just a few words to begin about Lawmeyer. Founded in 1976, Lawmeyer Sculpture Park is one of the first and largest sculpture parks in the country. We present more than 70 artworks of large-scale outdoor sculpture through our 105 acres. Marcus's work at Rose Memorial is part of our current exhibition, Salutary Sculpture. The exhibition features work by 8 artists who explore art's capacity as a therapeutic tool for adaptation, recovery, and rehabilitation. Here, Rose River Memorial, as you can see behind me, follows the pattern of the building's architectural form while embodying the enormity of loss, embracing community participation, and making the therapy and art a visual experience. Thank you to our team here at Lawmeyer, especially our Chief Preparator Riley Williams for installing the roses and our education staff for coordinating the rose making stations that will help to meet our goal of an additional 6,000 roses. As you can see installed here at Lawmeyer, there's a little over 10,000 roses represented, one for each person who's died of COVID in the state of Missouri. Thank you again to Kelly Daleen, who has joined us here this evening with 2 of her Girl Scouts from the local troop of here in St. Louis. Thank you to their group. These girls are such an inspiration. And also thank you to Nicole Dalton at Girl Scouts of Eastern Missouri and Tracy Hall with the Girl Scouts of Western Missouri. Rabbi Jim Bennett from the congregation, and to Reverend Jim Poinsett at Interfaith Partnership here in St. Louis. Excuse me. We appreciate your being here to offer support and kind messages and prayers to our friends and family and to those who may be grieving loved ones impacted by COVID-19. Please welcome Rabbi Jim Bennett from Congregation Shaharei Emeth.
Thank you, Dana. As you can probably tell, it is chilly here in St. Louis. The poet has said that in the chill of winter, we remember them. And like all of you and so many countless others, we remember. And this beautiful installation behind me, like all the other memorials and installations, is an inspiring reminder to us of the countless lives lost. Thousands, nearly 19,000 in the state of Missouri alone, who have been taken from us by COVID. We are overwhelmed by our grief. We've learned from this, if nothing else, during these past 2 years, that though we are overwhelmed, we must still find hope. We've learned much more about community, about togetherness, about loneliness and separateness. And most of all, we've learned about memory and love. The writer Henry James puts it this way: we all live together, and those of us who love and know live so most. We help each other, even unconsciously, each of us in our own effort. We light the effort of others, contribute to the sum of success, and we make it possible for others to live. Yet sorrow, he continues, sorrow comes to us in great waves, but it rolls over us. And though it may almost smother us, it leaves us on the spot. We know that if it is strong, we are stronger. As much as it passes, we remain. Like these beautiful roses that symbolize hope, blessing, and love that remain even in the cold, darkness, sorrow. Like the lives we cherish, memories like the flames of memorial we have kindled. We too remain, and our hope remains. Find blessing.
That was so beautiful. Thank you both so much, as well as I know all the hard work from the Girl Scouts and helping to make those beautiful roses, and that installation is incredible. Our last memorial site that we're going to head to is in Dallas, and I would like for everyone to please welcome another incredible young person, Adelaide Urinda. She's a student at St. Patrick's Catholic School, and her mother, Caitlin.
Hi, I'm Adelaide. I'm 13 years old, and I've watched my mom and her group marked by COVID change the world. I appreciate all of your losses, and I've watched the adults grieve and move mountains. I wanted to do the same, but for kids like me in Georgia. She's 7 and lost her grandpa Mike to COVID. Her mom, Carly, and my mom worked together at Marked by COVID. I hosted a Rose River memorial for my grandma, Genevieve Martinez, and all my friends and I made about 1,000 roses that are displayed at my school. I've been inspired by all of you, Kristen, Tara, Christine, Carly, Brad, Angela, Rose, Gianna, Angela, and Rose. I'm sorry for your loss. Thank you for advocating for my generation. The last 2 years have been a lot for my generation to digest. I'm grateful to all of you for remembering me and my generation as we continue to make change, policy, and pandemic prevention.
Thank you, Adelaide. And I believe we have a few photos from their memorial.
Hello, my name is Adelaide Urenda Culpepper. I'm a student here at St. Patrick Catholic School. These roses symbolize all the lives lost to COVID in Dallas. We were able to make 1,000, which is only 1/6 of the lives lost to COVID in the DFW. I wanted to do this because over a year ago, I lost my grandma Genevieve Martinez to COVID. I watched my mom be an activist and work with her group marked by COVID, and it inspired me to do the same. I've watched adults grieve the loss of all those we love, but I don't think a way for kids to grieve was ever offered or considered. So I wanted to create a space for kids to do the same. I grieve for kids like myself in Georgia, and I would like to thank all my friends at St. Patrick's, my basketball team, my mom and dad, other Girl Scout troops from across North Texas, my troop leader Christine Powers, my school and principal Julie Hendry for helping me make this happen. It is our hope that we continue to memorialize COVID loss. Please join us in a moment of silence for those we've lost to COVID. Genevieve Martinez, Mark Equenza, Mike Horton, Charles Krebs, Dr. Gay Griffin, Obi H. Papa Dimitro, Charles
Wrong head.
And Caitlin, this is Adelaide and her friends and Girl Scout troop that are making roses. Is that right?
Yeah, so actually, this is her basketball team that right before their playoff game, they all got together and made roses. There was about 14 girls there, and they went to work. They did quite a bit. And then pictured on the right is Adelaide teaching a fourth grade troop how to make roses. As we get through, you can see that large stack of felt there. We had to get through all of that and built out 1,000 roses. And they were all really excited that Adelaide was going to string these up and they would be at school. And then pictured there is actually, I coach a swim team and my swimmers wanted to come out and support. And then the second row is Addie and her friends, little sister, who were there to help. They all read names and help Addie write her speech and corrected her and coached her through it. It was really cool to see those kids come out, and the back row, I mean, those kids are in high school, and then the front row is they're all in middle school, and to see them just come together and talk about people's names, like each of them read off some names that were submitted to us, and just listening to them talk about what those people's lives must be like, and them digesting the loss and how many names they were reading was heartbreaking, but they have really strong opinions of what we've been doing right and wrong, and I'm very comfortable with the next generation behind me that they're going to do really well in the world, and they are doing well, and they come together beautifully, so it's great to see.
Thank you both so much. And Adelaide, if you look in the chat, you'll see all of these incredible, gratitude for you for creating this space, and for you and Georgia and your moms and all the leadership that you have been taking on in Texas. It's such a joy to know you despite the circumstances. And I look forward to the days and months ahead of continuing to work alongside you to ensure that your grandmother, Genevieve, is not forgotten. Thank you. You're welcome. We're now going to actually hear a little, switch gears a little bit from our memorial. So thank you from the folks in Arizona and the incredible COVID memorial quilt that's on display there, the folks in St. Louis at the Laumeier Sculpture Garden, and to Adeline and Caitlin and the memorial at Adelaide School. We're now going to actually hear some testimony from community leaders in cities across the country. And our first speaker is a woman named Kimberly Jones, who connected with us a couple of months ago over our letter writing campaign. She reached out saying, I've been doing work in DC and for my career, and I just wanted to connect and see if I could help. She and I had a conversation, and I immediately fell in love with her and her story and her dad. And so it's my pleasure to welcome Kimberly, who's joining us from Maryland to share some remarks about her COVID experience. Kimberly?
Okay, thanks, Kristen. Let's see. This is my dad at his 70th birthday party in 2019, surrounded by myself, my brother, my sister-in-law, my mom, and the grandbabies. That's my dad, Carl Winston Jones. I have to stop share, otherwise I can't see anything else on the screen. But my dad was born in New York City, but he grew up in Ansonia, Connecticut. He could usually be heard humming a Motown tune. He loved to cook. He loved his family, and he was full of life. He passed away on March 8th, 2021 of COVID-19. That makes him one of the 957,000 Americans who have died since the beginning of this pandemic. And it's all but certain that before this pandemic is over, and it's not over, there will be more than 1 million Americans who have lost their lives to this awful virus. And that's to say nothing of people like my brother's mother-in-law, people who have survived COVID-19, but now deal with the debilitating impacts of long COVID, which has limited her ability to work and to maintain what was previously a very active lifestyle. I believe that a large reason for the spread of this virus is not just misinformation and fear, but collective amnesia. We have no modern memory of pandemics of the past. According to the New York Times, except for a small plaque in Colorado and a memorial bench in Vermont, there are no memorials of the last deadly virus to decimate the United States, the so-called Spanish flu of 1918. And unless people's parents told them stories as mine did, there is no recollection of the fear of polio in the 1950s and 60s and ending up trapped in an iron lung. And myself, as a member of Generation X, find it almost comical that younger millennials and members of Generation Z don't know anything about chickenpox parties. Because by the time they got to grade school, we had virtually eradicated the chickenpox through vaccines. I say all of this to urge everyone to fight for the passage of House Resolution 174 and Senate Resolution 334, companion bills to memorialize those affected and lost to the COVID-19 virus. If enacted, these bills would establish a federal COVID Memorial Day on the first Monday of each March in perpetuity. And painfully, this would take place essentially 1 year honoring the death of my own father. Every year, our nation stops to remember the horrors of 9/11, and rightfully so. We host parades and wave flags on Memorial Day in May. Yet the loss of life, American life, from COVID-19 eclipses not only those lost on 9/11, but we are on track to rival the number of all casualties from all US wars combined. So please, don't let my dad just be one in a million. He deserves more than to be just a footnote to history. Create the National COVID Memorial Day. Regardless of political affiliation, we can all agree that we should and must honor the memories of those we have lost. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kimberly.
Yeah, thank you, Kimberly. So powerful, and I think together we can get there and get that resolution passed. So thank you for all your incredible work and that, and sorry for your loss, obviously. And now want to bring in Jeanette Nunez del Prado, who is joining us from New Mexico. I've seen Jeanette in action in the way that she's been moving mountains, working to move mountains in New Mexico to try to move the needle on this conversation with legislators there. Jeanette, are you there?
Yes. Hi, Brad. Thank you so much.
Thank you for being with us.
Absolutely. And so my name is Jeanette Nunez del Prado. I'm a licensed clinical social worker in Albuquerque, New Mexico. And I lost my dad, Hugo Nunez del Prado, to COVID in May of 2021. He lived in Bolivia and didn't have access to the vaccine. And he died just 2 weeks before he was going to come to the US, get vaccinated, and meet my children for the first time. My dad was always the life of the party, such a fun person. He loved to play tennis, dance, sing karaoke. When you were with him, it was always an adventure and you never knew what to expect. He wasn't ready to go and we weren't ready for him to leave us. He deserved better. After he died, I didn't know how to move forward and cope with the devastating loss. I was lucky enough to find community with others like me in Marked by COVID, who've helped me to find my voice again and replace the helplessness I felt with the feeling of agency, power, and hope. I've learned to find meaning in my loss through advocacy, deepening my connections with my friends and family, and developing new relationships with the amazing other advocates I've met in this work for COVID justice and remembrance. Today, My sister Cynthia from California is here, my tia Lucy in Florida, and my 3 little sisters in Bolivia. Though separated by physical distance, we are together. And I know my dad's with us too. If COVID has taught me anything, it's the sacredness of social connections to those close to us and also the people throughout the globe. As we honor our loved ones tonight, let us also remember the 6 million lives lost to COVID in the world. I am so proud that our resolutions in Congress clearly state that we are honoring all lives lost to COVID-19 because they all mattered. My hope is that once we have a federally recognized COVID Memorial Day, and we will get that day, it can serve as a model for the rest of the world, and we can have a World COVID Memorial Day. We can stand together in unity as a globe in our grief and in our love. I hope we all leave tonight with the message that we are not alone. You are not alone. We see your suffering and we see your strength. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Jeanette and Kimberly, for sharing your testimony. We're now very privileged and honored to hear from Juan Pablo Osegueda, who is joining us from Massachusetts. Juan Pablo got sick at work with COVID at the beginning of the pandemic, where there was no information about the virus. And to this day, he has not been able to work a full 40-hour shift due to the side effects he continues to suffer after COVID. He's a member of MassCosh Immigrant Worker Center. And if you need live interpretation from Spanish to English, click on the globe icon below.
Ajá, ahí, ya lo toqué. Ajá, ya. Sí, hola, buenas noches. Me llamo Juan Pablo Ceguera, vivo acá en Boston. Y pues yo me contagié del COVID, en mi trabajo. Y pues, cómo me ha afectado, porque no fue fácil para mí. Y hasta ahorita, pues, no me puedo ver bien porque no aguanto un gran dolor en la espalda, en los pulmones, porque quedé falta de respiración y a veces voy a trabajar un día por semana, 2 días, 3 días, de ahí ya no voy porque no aguanto. Luego trabajando, me siento que me voy a quedar, la respiración me baja a 84, me voy para el baño a usar el inhalador para poderme sentir mejor, pues, y así pues sigo luchando y luego pasé 2 meses en el Medical Center cuando me enfermé y pasé 20 días agonizando y no ha sido fácil. Y luego de ahí que no podía caminar porque allí queda uno bien devastado porque me agarraban entre dos a querer caminar y yo no podía aguado los pies hasta que me dieron de tanto alimentos que me dieron comida, vitaminas, comencé a caminar, pero me agarraban entre dos caminando porque no podía, no tenía fijeza de nada. Luego me dieron de alta y todavía estaba falta de respiración. La respiración la tenía a 85, 90 y me dieron de alta porque no me cubría el seguro para tenerme allá. Y teniendo 4 días de estar aquí en la casa, me bajó la respiración a 6, a 15, como a las 3 de la mañana. Esa hora me llevaron para la clínica, le hablé a mi cuñado, me llevó y me bajé como pude de arrastrar en la grada y de ahí bueno, me llevaron otra vez para el hospital, me ingresaron, volví a agarrar el COVID otra vez y total de que no ha sido fácil y luego mi esposa también se enfermó cuando yo me enfermé, mi hijo y pasamos 8 meses aquí sin trabajar. Le digo, no es fácil. hasta ahorita no me puedo ver bien y es algo de que no se puede superar, pero primero Dios, con la ayuda de Dios, voy a salir adelante. Yo tengo fe. Tengo una niña de 7 años, que eso es lo que me duele. Tengo por qué luchar y tengo que ser fuerte. Y no es fácil. Yo les digo que esto no se lo deseo a nadie y gracias por tomarme en cuenta en la organización gracias a Milagro, a todos ustedes por daros la oportunidad de poder uno presentar este testimonio, que no es fácil. Gracias.
Gracias, Juan Pablo. Muchas gracias.
Gracias a ustedes. Buenas noches.
Buenas noches a usted. Oh my gosh. Thank you so much to Juan Pablo for sharing your story and testimony and really putting in context how this pandemic is not over. And for millions of people will continue not to be over. For us who have lost loved ones, there's no return to normal. But there's an entire universe of individuals who go to work every single day without the protections they need to keep themselves and their families sick, who can't stay home because they can't pay rent otherwise, or who are forced to go to work sick. We must not let anybody push this episode, this pandemic, and its horrors into the memory hole. It is the very first step in ensuring that our society looks at itself and what we've been through and what we're going through, so that we do not leave families like Juan Pablo's behind. So again, I just thank the National Kosh organization and Mass Kosh for co-sponsoring this event, for making it available in Spanish, and for bringing Juan Pablo into this circle. Our prayers are with you. Our action is with you. And I am just so grateful for your testimony. Now it's my honor to share some remarks from Congressman Greg Stanton. Congressman Stanton was one of the very first elected officials that we reached out to about the need to recognize our losses. He's from Arizona, like Tara and myself, and he has provided a short video to share with us. He has been leading this effort on Congress to establish a federally recognized COVID Memorial Day, and he was planning to be with us in person, but there were some last-minute congressional changes. So he recorded a video to share with us, and we're going to now play his recorded statement.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you all for being here tonight, and thank you to Marked by COVID for putting together this impressive event. As of this morning, more than 950,000 of our fellow Americans have lost their lives to the coronavirus, with close to 28,000 of those in our state of Arizona. Their absence in our communities is difficult to comprehend. I know each of you feel the loss every day when you go to call up a parent or come home to your spouse or even stop by a coworker's desk, and then to realize that they are no longer there. I also know that many of you missed out on the chance to traditionally mourn your loved ones. In an effort to keep as many people as possible safe, so many of us did not get the chance to say goodbye in person or to hold funerals to celebrate their lives. And so, to honor and memorialize those lost or impacted by this virus, I introduced a resolution designating the first Monday in March as COVID-19 Victims and Survivors Memorial Day. That day is today, and I am so grateful to be here to share it with you. I want to recognize two advocates who have been instrumental in gaining co-sponsors and momentum for this resolution. Kristen Urquiza and Tara Krebs, they both lost their fathers to COVID-19. They and others from Marked by COVID have turned their grief into action. They have mobilized cities, states, and now at least 64 of my congressional colleagues to recognize today as COVID Memorial Day. Their dedication is humbling and inspiring. Commemorating this Memorial Day is an important marker for all people affected by COVID-19. As we shift into a new phase of this pandemic and learn to live with endemic cases, we still need to take time to collectively grieve all the people that we have lost and help our country heal from this trauma. We need to let those who have lost a loved one or those who are still dealing with the long-term effects of COVID, we need to let them know that we see you, we hear you, and you are not alone. I will still carry their memories with me as I continue this important work. We need to honor those lost today, and we also need to honor the lessons learned in this pandemic. I will continue to push for accessible healthcare, support for community organizations, food security, support for healthcare workers, and pandemic preparedness. To all of you, thank you for your work, and thank you for having me today.
So thank you to Representative Stanton for those remarks and for all the work that he's been doing, along with other representatives and senators that have been moving the needle on this in the halls of Congress. May next year when we gather, may there be many, many senators and congressfolk joining us together for this day through the work that we will collectively do over the next year. And so now we want to move into really a part of the ceremony where our hearts can all show up fully, the honor ceremony, where we are going to have the chance to share the names of those that we've loved and we've lost, that we still love, but that are not here, or those that are suffering. And we're going to also be able to share a slideshow that we've put together, a memorial slideshow that so many of you contributed to. And we'll do that in a minute. But I want to introduce the person that's going to lead us through this part of the ceremony. Invite her back with us, Brenda Salgado. And also she'll be joined in the honor ceremony by Mark Cass. Mark is the lead singer and the executive officer for the Dirt Feelin' Music Group. Mark was also the youth coordinator for Alameda Point Collaborative, who does mentoring and advocacy work for formerly homeless families. So, Brenda, if you will, and as you guide us through the ceremony, would you mind telling us a little bit about the fire you've been tending and how it's going, and lead us into the ceremony?
Yes, thank you again for the warm invitation, and thank you everyone who's been sharing the precious and beautiful stories of those you love and have lost, for the suffering, both for those who have passed, but also those who have been left behind and who are struggling with other issues in this time. I want to just thank you, because in my tradition, and as I've been taught by Indigenous elders, it's very important that we honor our loved ones, our ancestors who have transitioned to the ancestor world for whatever reason. And in this time, what I've been tending to is a fire. I want to honor my wonderful husband who spent a lot of time this weekend chopping firewood, preparing the fire pit for this purpose. Always grateful to him and his support. And what I've been doing is singing to the fire beautiful songs. In our tradition, you have to sing to the fire to ask it to carry our prayers to the heavens and to our loved ones in the ancestor world. So I've been singing and drumming and rattling and asking the fire with a lot of deep respect and love to carry our prayers up into the heavens. I've also been offering many gifts of plant medicine of different types, copal, sage, frankincense, a lot of cedar. Cedar is used a lot to send prayers up to our ancestors. And then cedar that has been prayed on by different women at different times. And so we're offering those prayers up. And as I was doing that, I was also stopping occasionally and reading the names of those who have been sent in ahead of time before the ceremony, so that those ancestors in the ancestor world know that they're being honored and remembered in this time, and that they're loved, that they're not forgotten. And so what we'll be doing in this part of the ceremony, I'll continue to sing to the fire, make offerings to the fire of plant medicine to carry our prayers up, and to offer these prayers and blessings to those who have gone to the other side, so that they know that we want relationship, connection, love for them, even as they're not here in the physical world, that they're not lost to us in that way, that we ask for their protection, their guidance, their connection, their friendship, for our ancestors, so that they have the journey to the ancestor world. And you're going to be invited now to enter names of loved ones into the chat area. So if you didn't get a chance to send in the names ahead of time and you still want them offered to the fire, it's not too late. You'll just add them into the chat at this time. And there's some really wonderful staff that are helping with this call that will be getting all those names to me. And then I'll be adding them to the fire. What I'm going to start with adding right now are the hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of names that were sent in before the call started through your registration. And then I'll add more as they come in through the chat and they're sent to me. So thank you for honoring your loved ones. It's very important. We don't want to forget our loved ones on the other side. They want to support us and help us through our grief. They want to love and support us on our path and our journey. There's in some languages, there's no difference between the word for elder and ancestor, because it's just an elder who is not here in the physical plane, but still cares for us and wants to guide us and support us. And so we want to send all our love to those people that we've lost. And that is, they've left a hole in our hearts, and we also want to maintain our relationship. So many of our old traditions, we had ceremonies for grieving together as a community. And this has been such a hard time because a lot of people have not been able to say goodbye to their loved ones during COVID. And a lot of people haven't had the opportunities to gather with their loved ones to grieve together. And so this is our opportunity to send our grief, be in our grief together, and send that love up to the ancestors in the ancestor world. And go ahead and start a little bit of music, instrumental music, as folks are entering their names in. I want to thank all of you who submitted photos, names, so we can honor your people here. We want to thank all of you for being here, and especially want to thank you for that beautiful music. Music is medicine and allows our hearts to heal and feel. So thank you for that medicine. We want to thank those who submitted photos of your loved ones to us. It is our honor to present them to you along with more music as we watch this slideshow and this photo montage of all your beloveds. More precious, precious, beautiful medicine.
Recuérdame, o mi tengo que ir, mi amor, recuérdame. No te llores, por favor, te llevo en mi corazón, acerca mi tendrás. A solas yo te cantaré, soñando de regresar. Recuérdame, aunque tengo que emigrar, recuérdame. Si mi guitarra hoy es llorar, ella con su triste canto te acompañará hasta que en mis brazos esté. Recuérdame. Remember me, though I have to say goodbye. Remember me, and please don't let it make you cry. Forever if I'm far away, I hold you in my heart. I sing the secret song to you each night that we're apart. Remember me, though I have to travel far. Remember me. Each time you hear a sad guitar, you know that I am with you. The only way I can be until you're in my arms again. Remember me.
I think we should take a collective deep breath together right now. Just take a moment for ourselves and reflect on the heartbreak and the beauty that we were all just a witness to. So let's just together take 3 deep breaths. Just want to thank Mark, Cass, for that beautiful music. Please, if you're out there, if you want to share your gratitude for Mark, and also to Brenda Salgado for the care with which you're guiding us through this honor ceremony, and how you're honoring each and every one of the names that's been shared. I also want to thank, just around the slideshow, some of my colleagues at Reimagine, Misha Jain, Zubin Desai, and our colleague Nicole Tam. Nicole, who helped put the slideshow together and was responsible for putting each picture. She's in the Canary Islands in Spain, and she let us know, we didn't ask her to do this, of course, but for each person whose photo that she placed, she said a personal blessing over each and every photo as she placed the photos on the slideshow. And she said she wept in so doing. So just to say, there's so much care that everyone's putting into this together, and so much deserved care. And then thank you to all of you for sharing those photos, for what it means to honor your loved one, and for the names that you shared. And to let you know that this is not, this is a chance to put those names out into the world, and is going to be the first of many opportunities that we're going to have together each and every year. Or the second, I guess, since this is our second National COVID Memorial Day. But this is not going to be the last time we're going to have an opportunity in a space like this. We want to make sure that there's ongoing opportunities to celebrate the people who matter to us. And we're grateful that you're participating and making that so with us today. And so now it's time to think about how we want to wind down the ceremony through another very important blessing. This is our candle extinguishing blessing. And this is another invitation for all of us to do something collective, to release the collective light, and to infuse the world with the love that is in all of our hearts. And so I will read this blessing the first time through, and then Kristen, and then Brenda will read it 3 times through as a group. And I invite all of you to read it wherever you are with us. And then following reading the blessing 3 times, I'll then invite each of us to collectively blow out the candles on a count of 3, so we can do that as a community. So please read with me in whatever language is yours. By extinguishing our candles, we release light into our world to keep alive the memories of those we honor today and tomorrow and for the rest of our lives.
Al apagar nuestras velas, liberamos luz en el mundo para mantener vivos los recuerdos de aquellos a quienes honramos hoy y mañana y por el resto de nuestras vidas.
Al apagar nuestras velas, liberamos luz en el mundo para mantener vivos los recuerdos de aquellas a quienes honramos hoy y mañana y por el resto de nuestras vidas.
And now let's go back to gallery mode if we might. On the top right of your Zoom there, and on the count of 3, let us all extinguish our candles together and release that light into the world. 3, 2, 1.
As we're winding down here, I want to bring us back to part of our purpose. In addition to being together to acknowledge and honor our pain, our suffering, our lost loved ones, the community that we're building here and have built here. I've seen so many incredible messages in the chat of just the very simple feeling of not being so alone, because this last couple of years have been incredibly isolating. But we're also here to kick off the new season for Reimagine, which is about turning and metabolizing our pain, our grief, our losses into action. And I hope that folks here who haven't already had the opportunity to check out the COVID Memorial Day website do so. It's covidmemorialday.org. You have 4 boxes here on the Take Action page, which allows you to send a letter to your elected officials. I encourage you to do so if you haven't done so already, asking them to support Senate Resolution 334 and House Resolution 174. The second box is our vigil tonight. Our third box to connect is an opportunity to come to one of our upcoming community meetings. We hold them at 4:30 every Thursday. And this upcoming community meeting will be talking about next steps on how to advance our legislation and also our work outside of COVID Memorial Day. And then, of course, if you do have the means of a donation, there's a button to be able to do that as well. We are 100% volunteer run, so your contributions make a really big difference.
Thank you, Kristen. And just to also invite you into what Kristen's describing around Reimagine's season of grief, growth, and justice, which is beginning today with this vigil. We have a number of experiences coming up for you to be able to personally process some of the feelings and emotions that are coming up tonight, and help you in channeling that energy in meaningful ways. And so join us at these 2 workshops that we have listed here, as well as our vigil. We hold a monthly vigil, so we'll be holding space again on the 9th of next month to be back together with candles, to come as a community with Kristen and all of you at Marked by COVID and all of our friends at Reimagine to mourn, to continue to hold space in our hearts, and also to bring love into the world and fight for justice. So we invite you to do that. I also want to mention, I saw some of you out there asking this in the chat. We can send out the recording of today's vigil, and we can also put together just the slideshow component for you to be able to have that as a separate piece if you want to rewatch. I want to make sure everyone has access to these recordings of what happened here today, so we can continue on your own time to share with your family and your friends, or just for yourself, and any time you'd like to go back and revisit what came up this evening. And so I think Kristen, myself, and Marcos would also like to share something that we feel is rather poignant on this day. Some work we've been doing together around not just a national day, but what does this look like in permanence? What does it look like to have permanent memorials for COVID? And I know that Marcos, who went on a mission to create one rose for every person, to invite our world to create one rose for every person who's lost to COVID. He's shared it's been so hard to keep up, to get that number of roses made. It's almost, it's sadly daunting. But we've seen here today the power of human connection and the love and what it's driving us to do, to create, to make, to be. And so we are thinking together about what does it mean to develop a permanent memorial? What happens when we design something permanent so we can go to it over and over again across our country? And so together with the with Marked by COVID rather, and so many folks within the Marked by COVID community, those of you who have lost loved ones, so many of you on this call tonight have contributed ideas that have become principles for what a COVID memorial might become, a permanent COVID memorial. And here on this document, on the slide, you see some of the things that matter most to all of us. That what we design is bottom up, that it's personalizable, that it's accessible, that they could be in maybe cities across the country. I mean, the thing that we've realized about this pandemic, when we think about memorials, and this is really the thing, COVID is everywhere. It's in our homes, it's in our businesses, it's in our neighborhoods, it's in our communities. And when we think about memorials in the past, perhaps there's one in Washington, D.C., but that doesn't represent where COVID has been and where it's still going. And so how might we come together as a community and advocate for this day, but also for the creation of permanent memorials in our communities, and find ways also to memorialize the people we love in our homes, in our neighborhoods, in our businesses. And so together we're taking that first collective step and putting forth a design based on these principles that you see here. And what we've created together, what Marcos has really driven, and Kristen, and so many of you out there, and what Jeanette was alluding to when she was advocating in New Mexico, was partially for a permanent COVID memorial. And so this here is a mock-up that Marcos has put together with all of us to honor those lost from COVID by building together America's interconnected COVID memorial. This is what it might look like in Washington, D.C. But what Jeanette was advocating for in New Mexico is a New Mexico version of this. And where we're talking to now, there's advocates in the COVID Marked by COVID community in Fairfax, Virginia, advocating for the creation of something like this in Virginia. This is not created yet in the world, but this is a render of what's possible, where we would have a memorial base, a plinth, an analog for people to gather around, to place flowers, to be together on COVID Memorial Day in your own community. But yet also to be able to, in an ongoing way, add the names of people that are in real time, add our own loved ones, to allow each of us to participate wherever we are accessibly, to add the names and images of our loved ones to a memorial that we can visit, and then each of us can witness in person. So I don't know, Kristen, if you'd like to share any other words here, but the idea is that this layer would add a collection of stories and images and celebrations honoring the people that we love, and visitors could add their own, and together we could create this largest interconnected memorial that ties all of us together in our grief and also our love. If the virus can spread in the way that spread, can our love also spread in the same ways? And yes, in the end, we would have built together the world's largest interconnected COVID memorial. So I know, Kristen, you want to share anything, or Marcos, about what's upcoming with this project?
Thanks so much, Brad, for those remarks. And the only couple of things that I would add in to, yes, the memorial of memorials, if you will, is not going to come about without all of us doing what we can to talk about this, to keep it alive, to connect with others in our community, to help folks expand their minds about why this is important and why it's needed. And I think that part of what my journey has been is helping to demystify the process of how things happen in this country for folks who may not have been pulled into politics before, pulled into the national spotlight before. And one thing that I think about in all the advocacy work I take on is that I'm not doing this for me. I'm doing it for my dad. And I'm doing it for every other person who's not here any longer. And I'm doing it for Juan Pablo and his family. We owe it to our loved ones and to the people who are still suffering to not forget what happened. It is our job to preserve the legacies of 1 million lives lost in this country, 6 million lives lost internationally. And so one thing that this community has taught me that is that as long as we continue to share our stories, continue to share up for one another, ask for what we need, take a step back when we do, we will continue to be here for each other and ensure that things like this continue to take place. But unfortunately, it's not going to happen overnight. Unfortunately, our elected officials, irrespective of party, would probably rather forget that this episode ever happened. So it's up to us. It's up to us to keep their memories alive. And so I look forward to working with all of you in the days and months, and unfortunately years ahead, to ensure that not a single person is forgotten.
Thank you, Kristen. And with that, we really, I think, want to just close this out. You know, it's been such an honor to be with each other. I mean, I'm sure we all feel the same way, to hold this space for one another in all of our grief. Someone's asking for links in the chat to make donations, and we're so grateful. There's letsreimagine.org and also covidmemorialday./donate. Nonprofits, you can see the kind of love and care that the folks here are putting in. I also want to acknowledge, Kristen, I just want to take a second to make sure we acknowledge the people that helped put this together. And I want to honor Andy Engel, who wasn't able to join us tonight, but was a big part of putting this on behalf of Reimagine, and also Derek Hosberg, who's here, and Zubin again, and Misha, and the whole Margaret from the Reimagine team who got the word out. Kristen, is there anyone else?
Yes, big shout out to Christine Keeves, who's the woman behind The Woman, our co-founder at Marked by COVID. And then the COVID, the team of Tara and Caitlin. And I know that Cece here in San Francisco played a really large role in helping pull all this together. We've probably forgotten a few others. And so I apologize for that ahead of time, but this couldn't have been done as a collective. It's all of you coming together, sharing your story, sharing pictures of your loved ones, providing testimony is what made this as meaningful as it has been. And I thank you all for being a part of that.
And again, Kristen, if folks want to get involved and they want to, because, you know, even in this permanent memorial offering, it's going to take, and what it's taking is people advocating in their local communities to bring that to your community. And we're starting, you know, arming folks in the Marked by COVID community and the Reimagine community and anyone to really go out and be a champion in your own community for this type of change. And we're here to support you in doing so. And so if you're interested in being that kind of advocate in your town, in your neighborhood, in your community, Kristen, how can they be specifically a part of this memorial endeavor?
We're going to be talking about this in our upcoming community meeting on Thursday at 4:30. Just put the link again in the chat. You should definitely join if you're interested in learning more. We also will continue to, if you can't come this Thursday, please register. We'll circle back, but that's the best way to get plugged into folks who are leading the charge on these efforts. And then we also, want you to stay in contact and stay in touch. And, you know, maybe it's writing a letter this week. Maybe it's writing a letter this week and attending a community meeting next week. Pacing yourself is absolutely fine. Just show up to what you can show up. because for me, I can tell you that it's the only thing that has kept me sane in the last couple of years is this community in fighting for our loved ones.
So with that, I think we'd like to end this the way that we tend to end all of the vigils we host, which is by making sure everyone's voice is heard. And the way that we do that is by unmuting everyone simultaneously and all of us singing in our best, most beautiful voice, the only word that sounds good to sing in unison on Zoom. As you know, Zoom is a crappy platform for audio. But what we can do is if we sing the word love in an elongated way, somehow it just sounds beautiful, or at least not horrible. So with that, let us unmute the microphones, and on the count of 3, we'll unmute and let's just sing out love to one another and share that positive feeling we have for the honor that we're going to continue with for our loved ones and for each of us here together. 3, 2, 1, unmute.
Love.